Ready to make a real impact every day? Join the Active Day Home Care team and help clients maintain their independence in the comfort of their own homes. Make a difference in someone's life as you provide essential daily assistance and protect their health and happiness. Earn up to $20 an hour and enjoy additional perks like optional daily pay, 401k, paid time off, ongoing educational training, and more. Join a team that values care, compassion, and your professional growth. Visit activeday.com to apply.
This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now. Here's VOCM Open Line host Paddy Daly.
Well, all right, and good morning to you. Thank you so much for tuning into the program. It's Wednesday, June the 25th. This is Open Line. I'm your host, Paddy Daly. David Williams is the producer. You will be speaking with David when you pick up the phone to give us a shout to get in the queue and on the air. If you're in the St. John's metro region, the number to dial, 709-273-5211. Elsewhere, toll-free long distance, 1-888-590-VOCM, which is 8626. So, hearty congratulations to St. John's native Abby Newhook. Abby was drafted last night in the PWHL draft in the 5th round by the Boston Fleet. Her second home. She played 4 years at Boston College, so familiar with the city, obviously. She joins her brother Alex Newhook as professional hockey players. Really remarkable stuff. She also joins Maggie Connors as the second player from this province to participate in the Professional Women's Hockey League. There was no guarantee she was going to get selected. Everyone around was cautiously optimistic because she's a standout hockey player, but there was 192 draft-eligible players from all over the world. Only 48 players got selected, and Abby Newhook was one of them. So absolutely brilliant stuff for her. Thrilled for her and her family. Bravo. The Newfoundland Regiment have announced their broadcast team. So everybody knows Brian Rogers, right? He's a legend in the business. He's been broadcasting hockey and other sports for decades, maybe some 40 years. The play-by-play man this year, Seth Hyde. Incredible. Seth is in grade 12. Now, he's really good at this. This is not a PR move. Seth Hyde is a top quality play-by-play announcer. I've done some stuff with Seth. Lovely young fella on top of being a big talent, so he'll be the primary play-by-play guy. Brian Rogers will be offering color commentary and doing play-by-play on some select broadcasts. More announcements coming for the broadcast team for the Newfoundland Regiment. Of course, I don't even know if I mentioned the team. For the Newfoundland Regiment, of course, going to participate in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League this coming September down at the Mary Brown Centre. Seth Hyde. Dave and I were talking about, we should get him on for a chat. Well, we can't this morning. He's in school. He's going to be around the same age as most of the players on the junior team. He's going to be younger than some of the players on the junior team, but great choice by them. Bravo. Off we go. All right, a couple of notes as we talk some Canada Summer Games. One event that happens at every Canada Games is people are inducted into the Hall of Honor. And this year there's 6 athletes. Well, they're not all athletes. Some are alum and contributors and builders and the like. But one of them is Jennifer Bishop from St. John's. Jennifer Bishop is the past chair of Tennis Canada. She had an illustrious career as a tennis player. She was one of the top-ranked women in the world for the over 40 category. And she's going to be inducted into Canada Summer Games Hall of Honor just prior to the games coming up this August here in town and surrounding area. All right. So, of course, there's a lot of big fish out there that need to be fried. But one thing that was generating some consternation in this area was the whole landmark sign, right? The St. John sign was proposed to be erected in Bannerman Park, 6 feet high, 38 feet wide, illuminated letters. You know all the story. The pushback was ferocious, and the City Council heard it. So now they're going to put it on pause. So it will not be erected in Bannerman Park, at least not yet. And it won't be available to the Canada Summer Games participants and visitors. But, all right, so let's go back to the drawing board. I think one of the starting points that led to this issue is that there was no public consultation. It is always helpful in things like this and in policies like this if the public are made aware of it and given some opportunity to offer some feedback as to where it maybe should be. So will it be in Bannerman Park? I have no idea. Are people still worried about the $85,000 price tag? Probably so. But a pause button has been pressed on that particular sign, and we'll see if there are going to be any additional locations identified that we can have some actual public discussions about. Anyway, not the hugest deal in the world, but for some, it is. All right. Coming up this afternoon, and this should be a doozy. I'm maybe a bit of a geek, but I do enjoy when the Auditor General, Denise Hanrahan, and her team conduct their work and provide the reports. And we'll get Denise Hanrahan on. Dave, we should line that up for tomorrow morning. So this report this afternoon was the first phase, a review of the health contracts. So we know the biggest price tag contracts that the government lets is generally for infrastructure, hospitals and schools, the like. But of course, some of the biggest contracts outside of that are in the healthcare system. A lot of this is probably driven by the travel agency nurses and the tens of millions of dollars that spent annually on said nurses, the issues that it brings forward regarding camaraderie or the lack thereof on the floor when you're shoulder to shoulder with someone making maybe twice as much money as you and with flexibility that you don't enjoy. So that's one of them. Then it's things like Teledoc. And then a big one that is a go-to favorite for some of our listeners and a couple of our callers is the Compass Group contracts. That's where I'm going to put my keen focus, because that is an extremely lucrative contract. So it's a performance audit, but I think there's going to be a lot of eye-opening revelations inside this body of work coming forward from the Auditor General's office. So we'll be there at 1:30 this afternoon to cover what Ms. Hanrahan has to say, and hopefully she has time for this program tomorrow. And remember, there's another big private contract coming in the world of the integrated road air ambulance service. So the public sector is operating it for now. Medivie Health is going to take over in the fall. It's about 1 year since some 60 private contracts were integrated into one, and we understand how they've approached that in the world of air ambulance, but just a couple of interesting tidbits. So they're planning on adding a couple of new ambulances per month. The ambulances themselves cost between $200,000 and $300,000. Overall cost to manage the fleet and the paramedics is around $100 million. A little bit more than it used to be inside the old way of doing business with the 60-plus contracts, but not a whole lot more. So says Newfoundland and Labrador Health Services. All right, so when the private operators were brought into the fold, that meant some 500 folks who were working in the private sector were brought into the public sector. Better pay, better benefits. Imagine, there were some paramedics working for private operators that didn't have a health plan, didn't have sick days. Like, what? How could that possibly be? So we're told that they're way further ahead than they thought they'd be 1 year later. They talk about it working much more efficiently. One question I would have is, it's not that long ago we were told that folks working in that arena were told no longer to use the phrase red alert, which is what happens when you call 911 and there's no ambulance available for dispatch. So when we talk about efficiency and operational standards, it is important to track things like that, not in an effort to point a finger or blame, just so we know exactly where the shortcomings are or the gaps are, and so we can measure efficiency and measure success. I don't know why people are afraid of that, because it's not one person's fault. You know, the ambulance business is pretty busy, I would suggest. Then some other minor cost, not minor, I suppose, is about $3.5 million annually in repairs, about the same amount in fuel. And you know how much travel the ambulances do in this province? 5 million kilometres annually. I thought that was a pretty big number. So 1 year later, we're told it's working really well, but how are we actually measuring it? I think that'd be important to know. What do you think? All right. An announcement yesterday regarding income support. Before we dig into some of them are positive changes. I think many people overestimate or exaggerate just how many folks are actually recipients of income support in this province. You know, I've asked a couple of people just their thoughts off the top of their head. I get numbers like, I don't know, about 100,000 or more. It's really not. It's somewhere around 23 to 25,000 people on income support. So the proposed changes, let's dig into some of them. One that was obviously a concern for quite a long time is if two people were on income support, they couldn't both be living together and receive the support. That's gone by the wayside. Eligible adults will receive the same monthly benefit regardless of their living arrangements. Okay, two adults living together receive $561 each month. Not a lot of money. All eligible one adult households will receive a maximum of $522 a month starting in September. Two eligible adults living together, about $299 each. Then there is a back to school amount. It's going to be $100. Fair enough. I mean, I think unless you've been through the churn of the K-12 system, back to school does come with a price tag. And it's not just about getting a geometry set and some colouring leads and some pens and some paper and a backpack and a binder. There's lots of other additional expenses. So obviously $100 is helpful. Then there's going to be vision care benefits increasing up to $100 for an eye exam, $200 for glasses. All right. So you do wonder how and why we moved away from what was a heralded poverty reduction program in this province, like, say, around a decade ago. It kind of went away. Poverty numbers have not gone down as a result, so that's one thing. Secondly, what we also need to know is whether we talk about spending and the social determinants of health and housing allowances and the like, what I think we need more of are updates and programs to try to assist people to get off income support. There's always going to be a certain percentage of the population that require that type of support. People call it welfare, income support, whatever you want to call it. There's always going to be examples of people who absolutely need that assistance from the government. But there are probably also a significant percentage of folks on income support that with the required different programs that could be in place, maybe, just maybe, they can move out of that reliance on government. One such program was a pilot, and we had an update in the fall of September 2023. It was about the Employment Stability Pilot Program. I've called it a success. People take me to task saying, boy, you're quick to give government credit on this one. But it was working. So they put it in place. There was something in the neighborhood of 170 people participating in the project. It began in January. Come September, 40 were no longer needing income support. So it's some level of success. Understanding how it was working, the province was going to expand it province-wide. And I think that's happened. But it'd be nice to get an update, because if things like that can work, that's good for the individual who gets that help to get themselves off income support, and it's good for the province. It's good for the tax base. It's good for everything. What it includes: if you're looking for a job or beginning a new job, if you stick with that job after 6 months, you get a check for $250, $500 after a year, $1,000 after 2 years. And then things like an increase in money, job start allowance, they call it. It went from $125 to $250. So if you needed to buy steel-toe boots, or you needed to buy a sport coat, or you needed to do whatever, that money was doubled. There was also a carve-out about how much money you were able to retain. We've yet to be able to find an exact number on that front. So if you're on income support and you have some earnings, of course, some of that gets clawed out of your income support. But they increased that exemption threshold so you can keep more money in your pocket. That was in the fall of 2023. If it's been expanded province-wide, how many people have been involved in the Employment Stability Project, and what are the success rates? I'll continue to use that word, because if 40 out of 170 in 9 months were able to move on, then there is something you can qualify it however you see fit. But for 40, they're successful in getting off income support. So you want to talk about it, we can do it. Let's go to talk about increase in allowances. At least as much focus needs to be on programs to help you get off it. What do you think? And of course, we talk about people who are food insecure. There are plenty of people listening to this show this morning who are not on income support, who are living in a food insecure household. So we'll put that as part of the conversation. All right. A little bit of a change. So apparently, given new legislation, a new approach taken by the province regarding the number of unclaimed bodies in the parking garage, in the cooler, in the basement of the Health Sciences Centre. The number fluctuates, obviously. Between the government and go out to tender, now the contract has been awarded to Barrett's. All right. So apparently this week, they're going to start with some dignified approach to burials and cremations of those who remain unclaimed. So apparently they're going to be able to be brought back to their home community. There will be a permanent marker also erected. That's all good. What I'd like to know is, when the government increased the death benefit from $2,338 to $5,000, how many people have availed of that, and how is it actually working? And it's good that finally there's going to be some conclusion or closure for those who have seen some of their loved ones, and maybe some of those folks, after the government does its due diligence and search for next of kin for a couple of weeks, puts the name on the website. If you look at the website, there's a certain degree of sadness that comes with scrolling down, knowing that someone has passed, and either people don't have the financial wherewithal to claim the body, or maybe, just maybe, for some, they had nobody out there who would be in the position to claim the body. So we're actually going to start those burials or cremations this week. That's a good thing. Got a note from a listener yesterday after I mentioned organ and tissue donation here on the show. They're on a list waiting for a kidney, and apparently time is running out. So the issue here is, of course, just that friendly reminder. If you'd like to be an organ or tissue donor, please go through MCP and do exactly that. Sign up, and then sit down with your family to let them know what your intentions are upon your passing. The issue that this person spoke to is that there's just such a woefully low number of donors in this province. Over the past 4 years, Newfoundland and Labrador has averaged fewer than 10 donors annually, and so far in 2025, the number of people alive or deceased who have donated organs in this province is fewer than 5. The national numbers are pretty broad. The Canadian Institute for Health Information says that there's 1,929 people in Canada received a donated kidney in 2024. The same year, 2,922 people were on the wait list for a kidney. 82 people died while on the wait list. So this person who's waiting asked me if I could please put that out there one more time this morning, and based on the type of email that I read, absolutely more than happy to do exactly that. All right, let's change into. How are we doing on the phone, Dave? Let's get a good show going here. Hard to know exactly what's going on in Victoria. So 20 of the 24 firefighters resigned en masse yesterday, led by Fire Chief Justin Parsons. There's a pretty heated spat between the Fire Chief and Mayor Barry Dooley. Okay. So apparently there's some heritage property in the town, a replica fire hall, that they put some out-of-commission truck and parts and stuff. It's all under the care of the Heritage Committee. The town is accusing the chief of breaking and entering into that property back in May. This is, of course, on the heels of fighting the firefighter in Adams Cove. The chief says the keys to the truck and the building is housed, where it's housed, were given to the fire department. And then, of course, through the town's Heritage Society, they said they were in search of a better portable water pump and decided, hey, let's look at the old truck. But the mayor is accusing them of break and enter. So that to and fro, the back and forth, obviously of serious concern to the residents of Victoria. They're talking about using other communities' fire suppression services, Salmon Cove, Carbonear, to be the backfill. But of course, these types of decisions don't come easy, I would imagine, for people who are as committed as folks working in the fire hall, whether they be paid firefighters or volunteer firefighters. So hopefully there's a resolution that can come here. It seems to me that this is all about who's going to say they're sorry. How about we figure it out? And I'm not putting the blame on one or the other because I don't know the ins and outs of this particular issue. But for 20 of the 24 firefighters to no longer be in the hall available to fight a fire or respond to whatever the case may be, a serious collision on the highway, say, for instance. But if someone, either the mayor or the fire chief, Justin Parsons, or Mayor Barry Dooley would like to come on and give us some update here, let's do it. All right, a couple of quickies before we get to you. So we got the new inflation rate numbers, and it's holding steady at 1.7%. All right. The concern that I think we all share, because regardless of who you voted for, we all have to eat. Food inflation remains incredibly stubborn at 3.3%. So some things have eased when it comes to shelter costs. They have eased somewhat. They point to, specifically to Ontario, where there has been some reduction in rent. Oh, and speaking about some of the income support numbers, the NDP will point to the fact that they continue to talk about rent control, and that's a big topic that we can discuss. So inflation at 1.7, food 3.3, particularly difficult. And the leaders of the NATO nations are meeting today. There's going to be a debate about defense spending. Of course there is. And in an effort to placate the American president, the debate will be about what percentage of GDP that countries are obliged to spend on defense. Of course, going from 2 to 5. Okay, so let's break it down a little bit. The government this year pledged, even though it would be nice to see a budget and all the rest of it, have pledged an additional $9.3 billion to the national defense budget. Defense spending in this country is in and around $62 billion. To make the way to 5% of GDP, $150 billion a year. Now it's broken down 3.5% direct military spending, the 1.5% in military infrastructure and support work. Okay. Some of the things that this country has talked about doing could indeed be covered inside that additional 1.5%, but $150 billion. Wouldn't it make a little bit more sense, as opposed to pretending that every country's needs are the same across the board, to spend where we need? And we have lots of needs. We're woefully unprepared. Not me saying so, it's the military saying so. We're short on a lot of personnel. We have the continued ongoing issue regarding the F-35 fighter jet to replace the CF-18s, because you can't have both. The cost for training and for maintenance and for storage and everything else would be just out of this world complicated and costly. So $150 billion a year. What this might unfortunately result in is we know not only about military preparedness, but how much money we spend on veterans. Would an increase like this, from $62 billion to around $150 billion a year, would that mean that veterans would be possibly on the outside looking in as we spend on active military? And we know that there's huge shortcomings insofar as Veterans Affairs goes. So that would be one worry that I would have. And of course, I'm not a veteran, but if you want to talk about that. And of course, as the world watches, who knows where your eyes are focused if we talk about international issues, diplomacy, and war. Lots to discuss, and much of it really quite troubling. All right. We're on Twitter. We're VOCM Open Line. Follow us there. Email address is openline@vocm.com. In the lead up to the Canada Summer Games, the quest for 5,000 volunteers needed to be an aggressive campaign. I think they've achieved their target, but people have brought forward a couple of concerns, like paid leave for government employees to participate as volunteers at the game. 6 days paid leave, for instance, and no cooling off period or recovery period, none of that stuff. Then there's the issue regarding volunteers and officials who, when not at their site, they would have to go pay to see another game. Some people don't like that. So some of those issues we'll broach with Colin Corcoran. He's the Canada Games Volunteer Services lead. He joins us right after the break, and then we're speaking with you. The topic, up to you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 1 and say good morning to the Canada Games Volunteer Services lead. That's Colin Corcoran. And good morning, Colin. You're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. How are you?
Not too bad at all. How about you?
I am fantastic.
Okay, right off the bat, have you hit the 5,000 volunteer target?
Patty, I can tell you, and you're the first one to know, we have just surpassed our 5,000 target, actually by 100 plus at this point in time. So we have officially surpassed 5,000 volunteers for the 2025 Canada Games.
I'm really pleased to hear that. And of course, any undertaking like this will come with people having questions and concerns. We've heard from some folks who found it to be quite difficult to even register and get accepted as a volunteer. I know you've heard some of these stories, some of your fellow team members have as well. What do you say to those particular instances where folks said, look, I want to be a volunteer, but I just couldn't get there?
Yes, absolutely. And so, as you can imagine, with an undertaking of this size, this scope, first time that we've done this since in this region since 1977. But we have a fairly robust volunteer recruitment, training, scheduling system, whereby everything starts from that for the initial intake from the application on the website itself. That's the first place to start. And so, what we're finding is that over the past especially over the past couple of weeks, we have been inundated with calls, emails, requests by the hundreds and hundreds, as you can imagine. Yesterday alone, we processed over 600 volunteers at our volunteer center. And so for that, I just ask people's patience and understanding for the team during this busy period, because the other part is we have staff and we have volunteers who are on the ground supporting. On the other side, to support people as they're starting their volunteer journey, or if they want to start their volunteer journey, what we're finding is that there's sometimes some quick fixes. Checking junk mail accounts in case the email went to the junk mail. When you fill out the volunteer form, ensuring you're actually filling it out and then clicking submit. And if people have questions or they're struggling with filling out the form, they can always contact us at the volunteer center or drop in as well on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 12 to 8 or Wednesdays from 12 to 5 so we can support people in starting their volunteer journey.
We know that, the games don't start till August, but August is a blink of an eye away. Are you running into much in the way of timeline concerns regarding the need for criminal background checks? Because even prior to the games, the volunteer campaign, there was people talking to me about saying, boy, I've been waiting months for this background check, and now with an additional 5,000 requests, any issues there?
We have been working with the RNC. We've been working with other providers of criminal background checks to try to take some of the backlog. That, as you can imagine, thousands and thousands of people have requested those criminal background checks, and that's a requirement for us for the games. And so we will be notifying all volunteers about deadlines. set by the RNC in particular for criminal background checks, so that we're meeting the timelines to ensure that we have the volunteers ready with the paperwork that they need to do their training, to get scheduled, to process through, to continue their volunteer journey. And so for high-risk volunteers, the deadline with the RNC is actually today, June 25th. So keep that in mind. And those are roles where we need a criminal record screen in Bolivar sector. And then for the application deadline with the RNC as well, July 13th is our deadline. We've been working with the RNC, the RCMP, and also other external providers to ensure that we're doing everything we can to reduce timelines and ensure that volunteers are able to get their screening before we cascade right into August.
All right. And it's not that this is a new thing. It happened back in the Corner Brook held games, the Newfoundland and Labrador games. But I've heard from plenty of people, Colin, I'm sure you folks have too, it's about folks who booked their holidays, taken their own vacation time to volunteer in the games. And now we understand that between City of St. John's employees and provincial government employees, paid leave, up to 6 days of paid leave to work alongside the volunteers. The folks that have reached out to me think that feels to them as patently unfair. Your thoughts?
I can't comment on any one employer's decision or another, be it public or private, to provide paid leave for the employees. And I understand that some municipalities have done it, some organizations have done it, corporate partners of Canada Games have done it as well. And so we're seeing a number of employers incorporate Canada Games into their existing volunteer time off, paid leave systems as well. But I know that even over the past couple of months, we've been meeting and exceeding all of our recruitment targets, and part and parcel of that is because the number of employers, including City of St. John's back in January, who have taken that step forward to incorporate volunteerism in terms of their leave schedules. And so the one thing I actually applaud employers for doing so, and the reason why I applaud employers doing so to kind of connect this to the broader kind of conversation around volunteerism is on Monday we got some of the preliminary data from StatsCan around giving and volunteering, and we know since 2013 nationally, and I don't have Newfoundland Labrador stats yet, that's a couple of months away, but since 2013 nationally, we've had a drop of over 40% of people who are actually volunteering. That's across Canada, that's millions of volunteers, that's millions of hours of volunteering. And so I think that when we take this moment, and I hope that we can talk about this in maybe a couple of years' time, and we look back on it, we're going to look at some of the leadership from employers who have incorporated this into their leave for their staff as one of those key strategies to support volunteerism. And I know that even the municipalities differ in terms of their approach, and I think that some of them have 8 hours per week for the city, or some of them have a matching system as well. And so again, it comes back down to the individual employer. But across the board for employers incorporating this into their leave structures, I absolutely applaud it.
You and I have had the dearth of volunteers since the pandemic conversation, and it's an important one. Things like volunteer for the summer games feels a little bit more like one-off versus permanently volunteering for one not-for-profit or charity, but I understand where you're coming from. So how did this happen? Did the organizing committee go to the province, to go to the city, to ask for this to happen, or how did it actually come to pass?
I'm not sure, actually. I'm happy to follow up afterwards with a response. But what I've noticed is that different employers have taken it upon themselves to do this, and we know that across Newfoundland and Labrador, as volunteers are thinking about the games and as they're speaking with their employers, they're having that conversation. Hey, I'm taking this time off for Canada Games, or I'm looking to do this during this period of time. And so we can check back and then circle back with you on that one.
Thank you. And I think people would make a distinct difference in their mind about if a private sector company wants to do that, fair ball. It's a different thing when we talk about the government's various levels because they don't have any money. It's our money. So I'll put that out there. There's also some concerns coming to me about volunteers and officials. So once they have participated where they're assigned, like if I'm an official working inside the round robin, but I'm not assigned to the medal round, if I want to go see how the competition wraps up, I have to pay. Same thing for volunteer. Is that accurate, number one?
So that is accurate. So for volunteers, we actually have a separate recognition program for volunteering, and that includes the 4-piece volunteer kit. Funny enough, if you can see me, I'm currently wearing my shirt now, my polo now. But it includes a 4-piece kit with the jacket, the 2 shirts, the hat. Also, during special times, we've offered discounts on merchandise. We've put dedicated time and attention into training those volunteers, from everything from safe sport to their role-specific training to general games orientation, so they're getting that as a benefit. In addition, at the end of the games, we have on August 26th a massive celebration of our volunteers, and then all throughout the volunteer services team and Canada Games have been recognizing volunteers in social media posts and strategies and whatnot, and so similar to other games. And so yes, we haven't had this game in Newfoundland and Labrador since 77 and 99 for the winter in Corner Brook, but we learn from other games and what is the best strategy moving forward. And so what we heard from volunteers is they like to be celebrated. They like the merch. They like the pieces that they can use. So that's the recognition program that we have placed for volunteers, and we've heard a lot of positive feedback around how volunteers are feeling about their volunteer journey as they continue. Yeah,
I'm not even sure how much revenue we'd be talking about here because it's unlikely that venues are going to be sold out to the rafter, so to speak, for every single competition. The volunteers that would go to watch another game or a race or what have you, they'd be cheering on the home team. And the volunteer hours of commitment here are pretty extensive. So there's going to be a lot of tired volunteers that probably wouldn't go to another game either. So we're probably talking about a small-ish percentage of volunteers who would like, or officials that would like to go watch another game. So was there a revenue calculation done there? Because I don't even know how many volunteers outside of their volunteer hours would like to go.
And that's a good question, and like similar to your preamble around nerding out over AG reports, I tend to nerd out over the finance as well, but I don't have that information in front of me because the beautiful thing about the way that Canada Games is organized is I'm aware of all things, but I am very much focused on volunteer services, so I can't speak on the budgeting or the targets at this point in time. But you're absolutely right. The other part of it for volunteers is we're going through a fairly robust process, and we are asking them for a minimum amount of hours and putting them on schedule for over the span of 2 weeks. And so it is a professional volunteering role. And so they'll have that experience of being trained, being vetted, accredited, the swag, celebrated. And so outside of those, there's some that may choose to because they're interested in a particular sport, or maybe they have friends or family, because it's Newfoundland and Labrador, after all, who are involved in the games. And so the other part of it on the demand side, we are expecting nearly 20,000 people to come here and cheer on the athletes. I heard our CEO, Karen, said it's quite possibly one of the biggest Canada Games in recent memory. So we have that many coming, and that includes, parents, grandparents coming to cheer on their athletes. I noticed over socials over the past, and you mentioned about the Hall of Fame, I noticed posts from other jurisdictions, other provinces and territories about people saying, I can't wait to come to Newfoundland and Labrador. I'm so excited to come to Newfoundland and Labrador. And so that excitement that we're feeling now, that excitement is building across the country. And as we get closer and closer and closer to games time, we'll see will see that unfold. And what I'm really excited about in this particular instance is seeing the excitement on the faces of the volunteers as they're participating in transport and motor pool, as they're participating in the athletes village, as they're participating in food services, the green team, when they're acting as officials, when they're on the volunteer services crew. Because to go back to the percentage who are looking for, well, why not tickets or whatnot, the one overall experience that people are going to have as a volunteer for these games is a once or twice in a lifetime opportunity. We're not going to, we may not see this, hopefully we will, we may not see this in the next decade. And so when I speak to volunteers who are there for the 77 games or the 99 games, they speak with such fondness and such excitement, like the memory was just yesterday. And I think that's one of the pieces that is an intangible with the volunteer side of things, is this is an experience, this is such an opportunity, and we're so glad to be offering it and being able to do it here in Newfoundland, Labrador.
Appreciate the time, Colin. Thanks for doing it.
Thank you, Paddy. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye. It's Colin Corcoran, the Volunteer Services Lead for the Canada Summer Games. Let's take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Say good morning to the Mayor of New West Valley. That's Mike Tiller. Mayor Tiller, you're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. How are you?
Excellent today. Thanks. How about you?
Not bad at all, sir. I wanted to chime in about the situation that's going on in Victoria. I feel like I have some insight into this, being the mayor of the town and also the deputy fire chief. I kind of have a lot of experience in both roles, and I heard your preamble, and you're 100% right that 90% of the time, whether you're a paid volunteer or a paid firefighter or a volunteer, you're pretty much doing the same role. The only big difference that I feel is in this situation is that had this been a situation where there were paid firefighters, like City of St. John's or towns of Gander, Grand Falls, Windsor, etc., that I don't think it would have gotten to this boiling point. I mean, you would have had unions involved, there would have been mediators from the town, there would have been help to bring the two sides together to get this straightened out. I mean, as you said, this happened in May month, so you probably got a month where this has been festering and building up, and things have happened where it reached a very vocal, emotional point yesterday. I watched the full 20-odd minute video that you guys had posted on VOCM, and I think this goes far beyond now one person saying they're sorry. I think, in my opinion, this is, you always make the comment that we don't want the government in our bedrooms, but I think in this situation the government has to step in and sooner rather than later and fix this so that the town of Victoria is not in a situation where they don't have fire service.
Yeah, look, and I can't get directly involved because I don't really know all the background necessarily, only what I read. I don't know if there's any personality conflicts that play a role here, but what I do know is if I live in Victoria, that I'm just hoping there's no fire.
You're 100% right, Paddy, and again, I don't know the ins and outs, but in small towns, when you know people, it's the same as if you're around a council chamber or you're around a fire hall table. There's going to be some personality conflicts, and when you don't have, staff from municipal affairs, or you don't have staff that are trained from the town to sometimes mediate these things, this is what happens. It's the same as if you have issues with a councillor around a council chamber, and you know that there's been issues and you know that there's been a wrongdoing, but when you go to municipal affairs for help, it's to say, okay, yeah, well, we see where there has been a wrongdoing, but in the end, you guys had to make the decisions. And when you are in a small town, there could be some family connections, you know the people, you know the family, and it's very hard sometimes for volunteers to make these tough decisions, not because they don't know that it's right, it's because there's going to be some blowback. There needs to be some kind of mediation, some kind of government representative that can look at these things, take an outside view and say, look, I see where you're coming from. Maybe you do it this way, maybe you do it this way. But a lot of times when you go to municipal affairs or go to fire and emergency services, it's well, your council runs your fire department, or you guys had to make the ultimate decision. And again, Paddy, you're not dealing with big towns where everybody's paid and there's lawyers at your fingertips and there's mediators at your fingertips. We're small towns with budgets that don't allow to have these things that are readily available to us.
Yeah, and this is not specifically about what's happening Department of Victoria. But when it gets to this boiling point, even if there's some sort of resolution or some sort of intervention by the Department of Municipal Affairs, then comes the hangover bad feelings. And that's real. And that I'm not going to suggest it's going to hamper the ability for a firefighter to respond as he or she has done in the past, but those things matter.
They certainly do. I think whatever happens in a situation now, that you will never have the fire chief and the mayor around a fire roasted marshmallows. It doesn't seem to be that this is something that they're going to be able to work out themselves. And Paddy, to say that you're going to have a neighbouring town that's going to cover your fire service, I mean, we had an incident last night where if we hadn't been the ones that were on the scene and acted as quickly as we did, and the homeowner didn't act as quickly as they did, if you were waiting an extra 20-25 minutes for mutual aid from another town, you would probably have lost that structure, and that could easily happen in Victoria in the next 5 minutes. So I think when it gets to this point, there has to be government intervention, whether it's fire and emergency services, whether it's municipal affairs. They have to be the ones that go into the town, get the two sides together and say, okay, and if, again, I don't know the ins and outs, but when you read the story and you know, there's been 3 or 4 chiefs that have been bullied out, that's one side, and then you have the mayor's side saying that, you know, there was wrongdoings done. They're not going to solve this on their own, and I can't say that enough. There needs to be somebody to go in, do a full investigation and say, maybe there is bullying at the council level, maybe there is wrongdoing at the chief level, but we are not going to figure it out, and the townspeople are not going to figure it out. There needs to be an outside set of eyes with an unbiased view to go in there and make sure the people of Victoria are covered.
Because we know there's plenty of communities that share fire services, but for the folks in Salmon Cove and Carbonear, I don't know what the conversations sound like between Victoria and those communities, but it's not ideal because these are already services that are, I don't know how many firefighters work in either hall, but there's a reason why all these communities had their own fire hall, because they needed their own fire hall. So we'll see where this goes. And again, I'm not going to be anything involved in winners and losers and picking sides here, because I don't know the players. I don't necessarily understand all the issues, just the one about the accusation of break and enter versus just looking for a portable water pump. So anyway, I'll leave it there. Anything else on that front this morning, Mayor?
No, you're exactly right, Paddy. There are no winners and losers. There's nobody can win in this situation, and certainly not the residents of Victoria or any other town that has to go through something like this. This is where government needs to have mediators or have somebody that steps in and say, okay, we're going to do the investigation, we're going to make the decisions, and because you can't, this is what the outcome is going to be. Last time we spoke, I think we talked about drinking water in the community. So yes,
once again, just give us some additional information about, we know that there's dangerously high levels of THMs in the drinking water in New West Valley. You gave us some information about how that was shared with the general public versus in addition to what's being done to address it. Give us the update.
Right now, there was a steering committee that was put together. They've reached out to the town. It was brought to Public Works yesterday. There was a letter sent back to the head of the steering committee, and we will meet with them and hear their discussions and their recommendations. Some of the stuff that they've suggested, were it being artesian wells or reverse osmosis systems, we have been in contact with the engineers on this. And again, I'm not an expert, far from it, but there's engineers that are telling us that where we're located on the coast, artesian wells are not a good option for us, because if you gave it 2 or 3 years, they would fill up with salt water. There's artesian wells that have been dug in the town of Lumsden that are just down the shore that you know, and a lot of their wells end up smelling like sulfur. So we are looking into some of their suggestions. I'm hoping that they're going to take the answers that we give them to say that, you know, we are not the experts. We are bringing this forward. We can go to provincial government if it's their request and just check to see if there's availability of maybe a reverse osmosis system. That's not my decision. That'll be a decision of council. But we will listen to them. We will talk. We will work together as best we can. But in the end, I mean, the answers that we give them are not. They're coming from what we're told are the experts, and that's all we can do.
I appreciate the time this morning, Mayor Tiller. Thank you.
Not a problem, Paddy. Anytime. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye.
That's New West Valley Mayor Mike Tiller. Let's take a break. When we come back, plenty show left for you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go. Line number 1. Danny, you're on the air.
Yeah. The children on the Grace Hospital, and now they're moving to St. Clair's up on Kemmott Road. Now, if you move the Miller Centre up there too.
Pardon me?
To move the Miller Centre up there too.
Well, some services may be replicated in the news, the replacement for St. Clair's, but I don't think the Miller Centre is going anywhere, is it? Not that I know of.
I don't know. Anyways, how old is the Health Science Centre?
Good question. The Health Sciences Centre's got to be, 40 years old maybe, Dave? Somewhere in that neighbourhood? I think around there.
You think they renovate that one day?
They've done some work at the Health Sciences Centre, like they're changing and expanding. Emergency room, exactly right.
Yeah, but you think they renovate the Grace Hospital and the Health Science Centre and the cancer clinic.
Okay. The Health Sciences Centre, I'll just give you an update here now, was officially opened on October 26th of 1978.
Yeah.
There you go.
But you think they renovated, wouldn't they?
The Health Sciences Centre has seen renovations over the years, absolutely. Now, it could use a little TLC, I will tell you that much.
Yeah. Okay.
Anything else this morning?
That's it.
I appreciate your time.
Take care.
You too, Danny. All the best.
Bye.
Right, bye-bye. Yeah, and the Miller Centre obviously could use some TLC as well. It just got me thinking when we talk about the hospitals and hospital sites. There was a story, I guess it was last week, about a sulfury rotten egg smell around the entrances of the newly constructed Western Regional Memorial Hospital in Corner Brook. They were talking about some mechanical solutions that may indeed deal with whatever that stink is. So if you're out in that area, and give us an update as to whether or not they've made any progress on dealing with it, because obviously unpleasant to say the very least. In addition to that, people ask me all the time about things like smoking at the entrances to hospitals and what have you. And you see it fairly frequently. When the government put new policy in place that you weren't going to be allowed to smoke or to vape on government property, period, which of course includes hospitals, includes the Confederation building, includes the province's schools. The unfortunate reality, like many other things, you can put forward policies all you like. Unless it's enforced, it's just sort of words on a piece of paper. So that's the question I would have. I went for a walk around Kent's Pond in the middle of the afternoon, I'm going to say, a few weeks ago. So, of course, everyone was still on site. Parking lot was full of people working in Confederation building. And I don't know what this building is here, but if you can picture it in your mind's eye, you're driving through the big back lot of the Confederation building, and about halfway down, there's a building on the right, which I'm not really sure what's in there. But there was a congregation of folks having a dart. And I'm just guessing that they're actual employees at the Confederation building itself. So whether it be outside a hospital, whether it be on school grounds, whether it be anywhere that government owns and operates a building, it's one thing to tell me you're not allowed to smoke or to vape, quite another for people to actually enforce it and to abide by it. Let's check it out in the Twitter box. We're VOCM Open Line. Follow us here. Just seeing out of the corner of my eye, a pretty aggressive email about anything that I had to say about the firefighters in Victoria. Pretty sure I didn't say anything negative about either side, because I admitted I don't know the players. I'm not 100% sure if it's all just based on this one accusations or allegations of break and enter. And so that's exactly what I said. Well, what would be nice is to know how this ends. And so whether it be, as Mayor Mike Tiller suggests, intervention by Fire and Emergency Services and or the Department of Municipal Affairs, because the fact of the matter is those services are so desperately needed that it'd be nice to know that there's a pathway to getting this resolved. And it's not just about responding to fire, because as we know, firefighters are also an intimate part of the first responder scene, whether it be to collisions on the highway, some of which of course may be very traumatic. So that's all I've asked, is whether or not anyone understands how this ends, and hopefully sooner than later. All right, let's take a break for the news. When we come back, we're speaking with you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. I've heard people talk about what they call Driver Inc. in the past. This is about the trucking industry. So there's another story out about it here in the news today. And so just the basics of what Driver Inc. is. So some people in the trucking industry just refer to this as a tax evasion scheme. So what apparently happens is that some trucking companies, they misclassify their drivers. As opposed to being employees, they classify them as incorporated drivers. And apparently there's a distinct problem with how that and why that works. So here's what we say. They save money on payroll taxes, number one. Is why companies choose to do it. They lose all their labor rights, including fair pay, overtime, vacation pay, as well as health and safety protections. So this is obviously a problem. In 2021, the federal government put forward some regulations that said it's illegal for federally regulated employees to misclassify employees. And of course, the trucking industry is regulated by the federal government. The government goes on to say that in 2024, they added additional strength to the legislation by placing the burden on the employers to prove the worker is not an employee. So how frequently does that happen? And how frequently does it happen here in this province? You know, for the drivers, here's where I don't really understand how this works, is if I'm a driver and I'm an employee of a trucking company and they have classified me as an incorporated worker as opposed to an employee, why would I stand for the fact that I'm not getting the appropriate amount of pay, overtime, vacation pay, health and safety protections? Because there is a shortage of drivers. The companies can't afford to be losing drivers simply because of their want to misclassify them so that they can skirt the federal government with the requirement to pay payroll taxes. So apparently it's a pretty big problem. And when the trucking industry refers to it as, or some people in the trucking industry, I should say, including the president and CEO of the Canadian Trucking Alliance, a fellow named Stephen Laskowski. I'd like to know more about this. I wouldn't mind speaking with this gentleman. If the president of that group calls it a tax evasion scheme, or that's how he describes it anyway, then there's obviously something more to this. All right. And of course, sticking with the trucking industry and the reliance that we have on goods to be trucked in, food and otherwise, into the province, I'll put it back out there that I think we should all be clamoring for the Prime Minister to make good on his campaign promise to cut the fees for Marine Atlantic at least in half. At least that was the words he chose at that moment in time. In addition to that, it would be helpful to know that with reduced cost for trucking, whether that would see some sort of stabilization and a reduction in the price we pay for the goods that are shipped across Marine Atlantic and trucked to its final destination here, wherever that might be in the province. Speaking of people flocking to the province, COVID was hard, right? It was. And there's plenty of people out there taking plenty of very distinct positions on COVID-19 and government policies and restrictions and all the rest of it. Some of the world's leading experts in avian flu are here in the city at this very moment in time. One of the quotes from one of the participants, and this is a microbiologist professor at Memorial University, says, COVID has provided us with lots of really useful tools, techniques, updated platforms to analyze and share data. And so we're really leveraging all of those advanced technologies to help us track avian influenza. The problem, I would think, for the general public is we're worn out. And I don't think people really want to hear about things like the avian flu. And it has indeed been found just about everywhere in the world. Notable exemption, apparently, or exception, is Australia. It's been here. We've seen a couple of companies had to kill off their entire flock because of avian influenza. But that becomes the problem, doesn't it? Is if people are worn out and don't want to hear about it, because even if you don't want to hear about any of these things, and it's not like COVID's gone away, but people got tired of hearing about it. They got tired of dealing with it. And so consequently, people have just ignored it up until, I guess, at this point in time, I would think, the most people have anyway. Same thing goes with the avian flu. Nobody wants to hear about it, but that doesn't mean it's gone away. So it would be interesting to have some of the people participating in this just to give us the Coles notes about where we are, some of the risks that have been identified. And it's in Canada, and we know that to be true. So there was a variant of that infected a person in BC. There was a person that died from the avian flu in the United States. And I have no intention on being the messenger of, oh no, look out, here comes the next big problem, because I don't know how big it is. And I know there's minimal risk to human beings. There's certainly heightened risk to birds, obviously, but they are discussing that here. And as much as they point to some of the useful tools learned through the COVID-19 pandemic, it doesn't mean that people have the stomach or the brain power to want to deal with it, period. But something that's going on, and if there's something that's of interest to you, let's talk about it. All right. So again, every time there's any mention of the U.S. president, it brings forward some very emotional emails. Not really factual, but more emotional. I use the word placate when in reference to Donald Trump's demands that the countries who are member nations of NATO increase their defense spending from 2% to 5%. The reason I chose that word is because he was the only one talking about it. And it was something that kind of came out of nowhere. And I believe it came out of nowhere when he presented virtually to the World Economic Forum. So if that's going to be on the agenda, it's only there because one person wants it there. Now, should governments be spending what people call their fair share on defense spending as member nations of NATO? Yes, I would think so. And remember, once again, 2% was just an arbitrarily selected number. The same thing with 5%. And as it pertains to federal government spending here, in the effort to hit 2%, which we should have been hitting in the past, an additional $9.3 billion in defense spending this year. Now, of course, that comes without a budget and all the rest of the things people point to, and I understand that, which brings annual defense spending to around $62 billion. 5% would put us in the neighborhood of $150 billion. And I don't think it's a bad thing to question, is that a number that this country necessarily needs to spend on its military? Some additional coverage when we talk about percentage of GDP for things like cybersecurity. For the longest while, that's a question that I've been asking. How and why is cybersecurity not included in military spending? Because it is defending against what is a newly advancing technological war. I mean, just look what's actually happened in North America. One of the major pipelines in the United States was hacked into. Utilities have been hacked into. Water systems could be in peril. And we know some of the biggest corporations on the face of the earth have suffered these cyber attacks. Same thing with the federal government. And I would think the provincial government as well. Meditech system comes to mind here in this province. The Power School Hack comes to mind. I don't know if that type of cybersecurity could be considered defense spending. Very much unlike pipelines or the electricity grid and or water treatment facilities, what have you. But it's worthwhile entertaining the fact that there's going to be the vast majority of people in this country, including members of the military, that will not be deployed to active war zones. But like when Bill Blair was the public safety minister federally, and he was on this show, we talked about cybersecurity and asked about the frequency of cyber attacks. And he said at that time that it was nonstop all day, every day. And if that's the case, and they are the stewards and the protectors of so much vital personal information and vital pieces of infrastructure owned and operated by not only the federal government, but provincial governments and municipal governments, then of course we have to do our level best. All that, I'll wrap up this thought and then we'll get to the break. For the new Privacy Commissioner, Kerry Hadfield, you know, given the provincial government a due amount of time to understand what happened in the Power School hack. I mean, there was hundreds of thousands of people's information compromised. To understand what happened, whether or not there were any red flags that were ignored, as was the commentary surrounding the Meditech hack, and what additional safeguards have been put in place to protect it better into the future. Soon be time to have our introductory chat with Kerry Hadfield here on this program. Hopefully that will happen on the conclusion of our work into the Power School hack conversation. Let's see here. Let's take a break. When we get back, there's a couple of callers there. What they want to talk about, I'm not sure, but we'll all find out right after this. Welcome back to the program. Let's go to line number 2, second word to Linda Shea-Song. 16 years, Linda's been on council. Currently, she's the deputy mayor. She's chosen to run for the mayor's chair against the current mayor, Jim Parsons, this coming fall, and joins us on line number 2. Good morning, Deputy Mayor Shea-Song. You're on the air.
Well, thank you very much, Patty, for the invitation to join you this morning.
Happy to have you on. You know,
I can actually claim my claim to fame this morning is I'm a first-time caller.
Welcome to the program. We appreciate you making time. So you're going to take a run at the mayor's chair and take on the incumbent Jim Parsons. There were some thoughts that Mr. Parsons or Mayor Parsons was going to run provincially, but he's not. He stated his intention to run again to remain the mayor, which I think he's been for some 8 years. You talk about transparency, and you say that that's a move you'd make by hosting town halls, what have you. Can you give us an example of where the city has not been transparent?
And not saying, Patty, the city has not been transparent. Don't read that into the message that I would like more transparency. I think that if we're going to be transparent, that we have to have everybody at the table, everybody in City Hall. We have to have town hall. We have to run our issues through all our residents and find out from them exactly what they want. Maybe we can't accommodate it. Maybe we can. But it's up to the people to bring their thoughts and the pros and cons of what we're doing involving a certain issue or a debate.
Okay, so does that, in the city of St. John's here, even though it's not a massive big issue, it was the lack of public consultation regarding this big old landmark sign. So are you suggesting that every piece of business needs to be involved in public consultations and town halls, or how do you separate what is fundamental operations of the city, where you don't need that extensive type of consultation, to when you do?
You wouldn't take everything that's being done, because number one, that would be insurmountable. You'd never ever be able to deal with all that. But we have, I guess, debate over like what's the fallout of this issue. Where is it going to go? What are the public going to think? And I watched the story last night. That was a perfect example that if all of the people had gotten at the table, then you would have known who wanted it, who didn't want it, and how can we change that? Like, is there another route we can go? Is there another direction we can go in to after you listen to the people?
Fair enough. So, again, and I'm not going to try to put any words in your mouth. That's not my place. Is there something in the past that you think was particularly fumbled because of a lack of transparency? You know, an issue that has been dealt with, it might be in the rearview mirror, but could provide a little bit more clarity to me about things that you think could have been done in a different fashion regarding transparency.
Don't want to go into too much detail. I mean, obviously, I was part of the decisions that were made at the time, but I'm just thinking about the crematorium. Let's go back to the crematorium and the issues we had with that. When we first got elected 4 years ago, that was actually front row and center in everybody's mind. Lots of debate, lots of heated arguments coming from the public. So we had all of the people who were going to be affected in that area or in the city of Corner Brook, then we could have sat with them and said, what are your feelings? How can we do this? What can we do to make this better?
Fair enough. And so it's nice to have competition for the top jobs. You know, in so many communities around the province, in past municipal elections, not even enough candidates to fill out all the chairs at the council table. Other than your challenger, Jim Parsons, can you give us an idea of just how vibrant the number of candidates are coming forward in Corner Brook? Because in St. John's, it feels like there's going to be a really seriously competitive field.
I haven't heard of anybody else, only myself and the current and Jim. The two of us are vying for the top job, obviously. I've heard maybe one or more councillors, but I haven't heard of many who are saying I'm definitely running. But it's still early in the game, though, Patty. And it is a commitment, and there's lots of legal things that fall out from being on council, your code of conduct, your conflict of interest, things like that. And that's probably tighter now than what it was years ago.
Are there any issues or items on your desk that are going to be the next big concerns for the Corner Brook Council and its residents?
For me, right now, it would be our water treatment plant. And that's why I look at the team approach. So we have to get the government to the table. We have to get everybody sitting at that table. Where do we move on from here? It's time for us to stop putting our sewage out in the bay. And we've just knocked off some big ticket items. The Marina Redmond Centre is big. We worked on that for years as a group. We redid our returfed our soccer field. They're big ticket items that we did, but the wastewater treatment plant is the biggest one right now on my radar.
I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, and you mentioned Marina Redmond, that's a recreation complex. So with wastewater treatment, so many municipalities right across the country are not up to compliance with federal regulations. Has the City of Corner Brook set aside a very specific pot of money for exactly that? Slaving out a certain percentage of taxes and development fees for that purpose?
We have, Patty. We started it. I don't know the exact year that we started, but we have several million in the bank to bring to the table to start the water treatment plant.
Is there any understanding of just how much it would take to bring wastewater treatment to Corner Brook up to federal compliance?
But well over 100 million.
I mean, it's the, forgive me for using this, it's not one of those sexy items, but it's federally regulated, and municipalities are going to have to find a way to hit the target as best possible. Last one, and this bit of a generic one, but anyone who's running in politics at any level is going to need supporters to act as volunteers. Maybe some door knocking, maybe some phone calls, what have you. Are you worried about the concept of election fatigue this fall? Because it's quite likely that the municipal elections and the provincial election will be pretty close to each other.
Absolutely, and I'm not hitting it because I've obviously targeted a group of people, but a lot of people are saying I'm waiting to see when the provincial election will be, and if it's not going to be overlapping as much as what we think, then maybe I could help volunteer. But it is, and we've just come off a big election, so 3 elections in possibly 1 year, yeah. We are a little bit concerned about volunteer. I'm also a little concerned about voter fatigue too. People just get tired of going and voting, and my gosh, we got another one. But municipal politics is a game of its own too.
I'm not trying to say that everyone needs a civics lesson, but with election fatigue and voter fatigue, it becomes that ability to distinguish between who's running for what. I'm not trying to, suggest that the general public is woefully unaware of how things work, but some people they are. I mean, look no further than the fact of all the spoiled ballots we had in the most recent federal election. So candidates are going to have to do their level best to ensure that people know exactly what they're running for and why they're running. Anything else this morning, Deputy Mayor, while we have you?
No, I think that's it. Like I say, transparency is it depends on the person who is saying that they want more transparency. Yes, we've had more probably than we ever had before, but I really want to open the city to the residents. It's their city, it's their city hall. Every decision we make at the table affects some group of people in our city. So, let's get them in and not every day or every week or whatever, but let's get them in and engage with them and find out exactly where they're headed.
Absolutely. I appreciate your time this morning, Deputy Mayor. Good luck out there.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
That's Linda Chason, the Deputy Mayor of the City of Corner Brook. Let's keep rolling. Let's go to line number 3. Walter, you're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. How are you, sir?
Great today. How about you?
I won't keep you long, Paddy. I normally try to call in and have something positive to say, but that's not the case today. Maybe there'll be a positive result from this. That would be fantastic. Around our city, there's not much you can do sometimes with hazards that blow around, whether it's a can or a piece of glass or something. That's just the way things are in life sometimes. But sadly, we have a case here in the center city in the West End, and I'm not going to mention any names. There's a young man who is just screaming out for a bit of help. His actions and his behavior is putting a lot of people at risk, children, adults, pets. He enjoys going and taking garbage bags. I won't get too graphic, of course, and looking for items in the garbage. I won't go any further, but he just strews all the garbage, so it's needles and this and that, and all over city streets. At our hub, I'm the president, the volunteer position at the hub, on field and Merry Meeting. I mean, we are now ordering 3 times the number of garbage bags that we always had to before. And he is just, he needs some help. He needs a lot of help, and his behavior is putting a lot of people at risk. I'm not pointing fingers at anybody. That's not how I do things. I would just want to say to law enforcement, and I would want to say to people who see, there's lots of videos, lots of pictures of him, in this behavior, doing this stuff. When you see this happen, call law enforcement. Hopefully law enforcement can react quickly, because I'm not a firm believer of just throwing someone in a holding cell for 4 days and letting them go. That benefits nobody. This young man needs help. And in the interim, he needs to really, we need to be protected from his behavior. So I wanted to just bring it up. Sometimes people will say, there must be a lot of people. No, it's him. He will go with 15, 20 garbage bags and just throw them all over and pick out what he wants and then just leave it there. And it's causing an issue. Not blaming the young man. He needs some assistance. So I wanted to just bring it up with you today. Hopefully it'll bring some attention to it, because it's a little bit out of control, to be honest with you, Patty.
Yeah, and He's not the only one. I hear these stories all day, every day, and what can be done. And, you talk about need help. And when you say that, different people need different types or different levels of help or interventions. So what are you suggesting here?
Well, I'm going to tell you now that I saw that young man on Saturday when he was on Black Marsh Road. And he was walking down the street with a comforter over his back and nothing on his feet, just bare feet. So I pulled over and I waited till he got down. I didn't accost him or anything. I said, do you mind if I have a conversation with you? He said, sure. I said, what do you need from me right now today? What do you need from me so that you stop going through garbage? Oh, I don't go through garbage. Yes, you do. Well, now don't play that game. You do. How can I help you today? He said, I need a pair of shoes. Done. What else do you need? A pair of socks. Done. What else do you need? Bit of food. Done. Wait here. I went home. I got him a pair of my brand new socks. I got a pair of sneakers not 2 weeks old. And I made him a ham sandwich, and I gave him a few dollars. I said, now, what else do you need so I can keep you from doing what you're doing? And he said, nothing. I said, okay, I don't expect you to be making any more mess at the Hub or anywhere in the Center City or anywhere in Cowan Heights. Didn't work. It doesn't work. So talking to the young man was like talking to you. It was a wonderful, nice little conversation. It was nothing. There was no anger. There was no confusion. It was a good conversation, and I thought that the communication, I think, is lacking with him. I don't think he ever had anybody to have a chat and sit down on the sidewalk like I did and have a 20-minute chat with him. He just needs a bit of help. So what else needs to be done? Again, I'm not into throwing people in jail for 6 weeks and then letting them out. If anybody goes south of the law, I mean, we should have our Department of Corrections should do their best so that when they come out, they're better than when they went in. Their behavior has been corrected. I don't think the kid is a bad kid. I think he's just in a bad situation. And I'm not sure what else to say about it. I did my best, and I'm frustrated today to see about 17 bags of trash. A lot of it is hazardous material. And, the kids are getting out of school, Patty, and they're going to be going to the playgrounds, and they're going to be going to the walking trails, and they're going to be stumbling upon this, and sometimes children can be a little bit curious, and it's going to, it's not going to work out too great, I'm afraid.
I understand the concern, and I appreciate the time, Walter. Thank you.
Have a great day, Patty.
You too. All the best.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, I think it's time for a break, is it, Dave? Yeah, let's do exactly that. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Well, we just spoke with the Corner Brook Deputy Mayor, Linda Chason, about her intentions to run for the big chair to challenge Mayor Jim Parsons for the mayorship. Is that a word? Join us on line number 2 is the Mayor of Corner Brook. That's Jim Parsons. And good morning, Mayor Parsons. You're on the air.
I don't know, but I would like some chips. If you're sending out chips.
If I'm sending out chips?
You're handing out chips or chips.
Oh, yeah. I wish. Mayor Parsons, welcome to the show.
How you doing?
I'm doing okay this morning. How about you?
Excellent. Beautiful day here. We got a cruise ship in. It's again a great day to be in Corner Brook.
Before we get into the challenge of the Deputy Mayor for your job, how close were you to actually running provincially? Because there was a big school of thought out there that was pretty popular that thought you were going to run in the provincial election. Was that the case?
Yeah, I've considered it in the past. But you know what, Patty, it's about getting the right fit, and there are always, I guess, challenges. I really enjoy this job. I enjoy what we can do here as a municipality. There are some things that are frustrating sometimes as a municipality that you want to tackle at another level. But it's definitely something that I've considered. Not something I would rule out in the future, but right now I'm running for mayor.
So were you challenged last go around on the ballot?
Yeah, there was a challenge last time, yes.
Okay, and so you've got another one this time. And I'm not going to put words in Deputy Mayor Chason's mouth here, but even references to transparency and the concept of bringing more public policy to the electorate, town halls and otherwise. Your thoughts on, because we hear politicians all the time, accountability and transparency. Sometimes they actually bring it to bear, sometimes more often than not they don't. Your thoughts on any transparency concerns in Corner Brook?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I agree with you, Patty. This is electioneering. When I came to City Hall 8 years ago, of course, I hadn't been on council. I was new to the whole thing. Council was used to doing closed-door meetings. So in between the public meetings, they would meet behind closed doors every week. And it seemed like it was some kind of dress rehearsal for a public meeting where the discussion and decisions were being made. And that, of course, is not appropriate at all for what we expect in this day and age from a transparency perspective. So it's been it's taken a lot of work, and it's taken some convincing to get councils to become more used to debating in public. So now, we do we do committee of the whole in public. We do our regular meetings in public. They're recorded. They're available online on Rogers TV, on radio, and they're recorded, so you can see them on YouTube now. And we publish all of the complete package that councillors get for the meeting is on our website. So you can go on our website right now and see exactly what each of the councillors had reports they had when they went to the meeting Monday night. So in terms of commitment to transparency, I think that we've come a long way in the last 8 years, and I'm not quite understanding the complaint there. From an engagement perspective, we would definitely like people to be engaged more with how we do things, I like to think that we're doing the best that we've ever done, and we'll continue to keep up and try to modernize how we do things.
I try to hesitate with the endless array of sports analogies, but council is in some form or fashion like a team. It will have leaders, it will have some dissension in the ranks, but the need to move forward in a cohesive approach is important at the municipal political level. There was a pretty public spat regarding the code of conduct between you and then former councillor Charles Pender, who I think probably ran against you at one point. So how does that relationship work? Because that can easily get away from councils. It can easily get away from legislatures. It can absolutely easily get away from Parliament.
Absolutely. You know what? That's the thing. That was the biggest surprise I had when I came to council. Like I said, those closed-door meetings. One reason we had to put an end to those was because of the lack of decorum. At least with a public meeting, that does daylight is the best disinfectant in some ways. So getting things out in the open, challenging people to debate issues in public instead of personalities is very difficult. I've had a couple challenging councils, and I've had basically an official opposition both times. But despite that, if you look at what we've been able to get done on the issues, for the most part, we've been able to agree, and we've been able to get a lot of things done. So we've, done things like get rid of the poll tax, bring ATV tourism and for residents into our community, get our new aquatic center, Marina Redmond Center built, and do a lot of improvements to Jubilee Field, our new soccer field, and get a lot of things done that you would think it would be difficult with a difficult council. But it has been hard. You're right. There are always different personalities, especially on a council. It's different than provincial or federal politics in the sense that you're not supposed to have teams. You're supposed to try to work towards a consensus. It is a challenging environment, and talking to my colleagues all across the province for the last 8 years, we're not alone in that regard, of course. You have to work through it and look for the greater good for the community.
Yeah, there is something to be said for party solidarity. As much as it can be problematic, it also can help push forward the business and have some unified front. So I get that point. A couple of quick ones.
Yeah.
Did the City of Corner Brook do away with the poll tax prior to the legislation that is afforded to operating municipalities change? Because that was one of the key features of modernising that piece of legislation.
Yeah, no, I campaigned on it back in 2017, and then within a couple of years we were able to phase it out and then eliminate it completely. It was a regressive tax. It was a double tax on people who rent. They're already paying property tax through the rental amounts. We got rid of that some time ago. As you may know, Patty, the City of Corner Brook and the City of Mount Pearl don't fall under the new Towns and Local Service Districts Act.
Right.
So we don't have a new act yet. We're still operating on an old act. But yes, this is one of those issues where after years and years of talking about it, and my first term in council, I did have a council that was fractured. But we were able to finally push this along and say, okay, we can manage this from a financial perspective, the financial hit that it would be to do the right thing. And we got rid of it, I think it was back in 2019 or 2020.
Last one before I let you go. And it's not right in Corner Brook, but it is part of the Corner Brook economy, and that's Marble Mountain. So the government backed out the tender, no takers. They are, in this year's budget, do have money allocated for the Marble Mountain Corporation, but there's no guarantee into the future. The winters have been tough. The numbers are down. The snowfall is down. The government might run out of, political appetite to continue funding. What does it mean to your city and the region if Marble goes away? Because unfortunately for me, it seems like a distinct possibility.
Yeah, it is definitely has a number of challenges. It is, from our perspective, an important part of our economic environment and part of the tourism in the winter. I think that it's been somewhat handcuffed over the last years. For a while there, it was in very much a caretaker mode from a board perspective. We've had discussions with the various ministers on this. I have one lined up again to talk to Minister Hutton about this after the latest results. I don't think it was a surprise to anyone that there wasn't going to be a savior come in with a big pot of money that wants to just make snow and make this, just a ski hill. I think it is an asset that you can do a lot with. I've expressed some ideas in the past, potentially divesting the asset to a local nonprofit of some kind, just like the divestiture of our port here in Corner Brook happened years ago, in a model where the provincial government guarantees a certain amount of capital money to keep the asset up and do improvements, but then allow a board appointed and appointed by itself as well that includes professionals within the tourism industry, within legal, accounting, that kind of thing, but a local board that can try and figure out the best thing to do with this asset. Because the last thing we want is this thing sold off for parts. We want this to be a contributor to our local economy. It does. It does right now. It would be a big loss. I've received assurances from the province that they will continue to support the operations there to the extent they can. They don't want to see it go away, but we don't want it sold off as a real estate deal or something like that. We want to make sure that there is an asset for our tourism here in Corner Brook.
Appreciate the time this morning, Mayor Parsons. Good luck.
No, thank you very much. Talk to you soon.
All the best. Bye-bye. There we go. The two challengers for the mayor's chair out in Corner Brook on the show this morning. Let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to celebrate a centenarian's birthday, and also Terry's in the queue to talk about a book about autism. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Say good morning to the Ward 5 councillor here in the city of St. John's. That's Carl Ridgely. Carl, you're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy.
Morning to you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir. Paddy, I'm not calling to talk about any landmark signs or nothing like that today. I'm calling the 100-year birthday. In the Gould today, Leonard Ruby, he's a farmer, he's lifetime. This is his 100th birthday, and it's a big deal. It really is. He's, like I said, he was in the fields. Last year out of the field, he was 96 years old. So today, the farmers in and around the Goulds area, because obviously it's agricultural zone, they're doing a little parade from Michael Din's on the back line up to Leonard's house on Ruby Line. And as a drop-in, anybody that knows Leonard or his wife Lena, they can drop in and make it a special day for him. This 100 years is certainly a 100th birthday is certainly a special occasion.
Absolutely. So what can you tell us a bit more about Leonard? So
the Rubies in the Goulds are, they're named as in their 100 years, so longer. His family was involved with the Ruby Church. Leonard farmed his whole life. He, from a very young age, on 12 or 13 years old, he was in the fields. He was a twin in the Goulds. He had a brother, Eric, and him and Lena have been living on Ruby Line for the last 80 years, basically. So, I don't know if anybody's familiar with Ruby Line or the Goulds area. he always used to set up his little vegetable stand next to the duck pond on Boogie Lawn. And he had his little pond on the left if you're heading towards the goals. And Leonard and Lena were always there with their vegetable stands in the fall. And, something, he's after providing food to thousands of people in and around St. John's, Mount Pearl and surrounding areas. So he's well known in and around the Ghouls, and he certainly has done his share of good for the people of the Ghouls and like I said, surrounding area.
And we want to join you in wishing Leonard Ruby the happiest of birthdays, 100 years old. Absolutely incredible. I know a little bit about Leonard, but I thought I'd let you offer, considering that you called on it. Anything else quickly, Carl, before I take one more? No,
listen, like I said, the I know that the last couple of conversations were about elections and all that, and some of the provincial and the municipal elections is a concern at the same time. And one other thing I want to say is that for the voters and the general public, I would encourage, I heard the last couple of callers say about engagement. And, it's really important that the general public be more engaged, not just at the municipal level, provincial and federal, because, you really got a population, the majority of the population, they're not engaged, and you got a small minority of the population that are very engaged. And I would encourage anybody right across the province to get more engaged at the municipal level, and that certainly enables the politicians. And I don't claim to be a politician as such. I'm just there to do the best I can. But it enables us and gives us information that we're looking for. And so, the more people that can be engaged, whether it's engaged St. John's or whether it's in Corner Brook or wherever it is, we definitely need people to be engaged.
No question. Appreciate the time, Carl, and happy birthday, Leonard.
Thank you, Paddy.
You're welcome. All the best. Carl Ridgely, Ward 5 Councillor. Let's go to line number 4. Terry, you're on the air.
Hey, good morning, Paddy.
Good morning to you. I think that's a bad line, is it, Dave? Yeah, let's put Terry on hold, make sure we get a nice, clear, clean line so we can hear what Mr. Bursey has to say. Terry Bursey is an author. I'm pretty sure we've spoken to Terry in the past here, and I think he has a new book out. And we generally speak with Terry about the spectrum, the autism spectrum. I say this oftentimes, and I think it's the right way to put it, is if you've met one person on the spectrum, you've only met one person on the spectrum. The autism spectrum is extremely broad and impacts people in vastly different ways. Let's see if we have a better line now to say good morning to Terry. Terry Bursey, you're on the air. Hi, Terry.
Hi, how are you?
Okay this morning. How about you?
Oh, I can't complain, sir. It's a very beautiful morning all day today, and you got a lot of really great goals to accomplish so far for the rest of this week. So I'm in good spirits.
I'm glad to hear it. What type of goals are you trying to accomplish this week?
Well, after years and years of trying my best and checking boxes to do everything that I need to do in order to get my debut novel published. I actually self-published my novel there just a couple of days ago. It's called Terra Nova New Earth. It's Newfoundland science fiction. And the purpose of the novel is actually a vehicle to encourage autism acceptance. As I probably mentioned with you guys before, I'm an actually autistic writer, specifically what used to be called Asperger's syndrome, but of course no one's been diagnosed with that in over a decade now. It's all been put into ASD as the medical model diagnosis. And my book is something I've worked really, really hard on. It began shortly after I started writing for Edible Newfoundland and Labrador magazine. Began in earnest, I should say, like really jotting it down, the first draft. And, since then I had joined Writers NL, looking for supports there. I had submitted it for publication to every major publisher on the island. Did not go according to plan. In many ways, it even actually presented more barriers than I already had. But as it looks here now, I promised my grandmother I'd have it published by her 79th birthday. So when June 15th rolled around, I made the steps to actually get self-publishing underway through Amazon, and I've got that up and running there now, and it actually feels pretty good, I must say, to actually have this goal accomplished in one way or another.
Congratulations. If I'm not mistaken, the lead character is someone on the spectrum. Why is that important? Is it simply about someone who is on the spectrum to be able to read a book that kind of sounds like, looks like them?
Well, yeah, representation is really important, and it's something that adult neurodivergent people have been crying for years and years. And when we do get that representation, it tends to be inauthentic. It tends to be what neurotypical people see us as rather than how we see ourselves. With this book, I wanted to make sure that not only were the autistic characters properly represented in various traits across the spectrum, but I also wanted to make sure that ADHDers were represented, that the queer community was represented, that a lot of underrepresented groups, especially within our province, have at least one character that they can identify with, and that they could really that really resonates with them. And of course, each and every neurodiverse trait is incorporated into the storyline. So a lot of really neurotypical readers, when they were to open up the book, many of them pointed out that the motivations were unique. When it comes to the main character, for example, he really does not want to be social at all, and that's part of his traits. His name is Daxton Blackwood. He's an autistic 23-year-old scientist, essentially, who's crash-landed on another planet. And where everybody else wants to meet up with survivors and basically reconnect and reform community, his main goal, his driving force, is to get away from everyone and to study wildlife in solitude. And you know, these kind of things, I think, did present some barriers in publication because it was not typical. When you encounter a book that has unique motivations or character motivations within it, and the storyline tends to take a few twists and turns based on those neurodivergent traits and motivations, a neurodivergent reader would look at it and be like, wow, this actually makes sense. Whereas a neurotypical reader, it would give them pause. But that's kind of what I wanted. I wanted readers to experience neurodiversity firsthand, to walk a meter in autistic shoes, for example. And, you know, I think I accomplished that with this work.
And congratulations, good for you. When you self-publish, makes it sometimes a little bit more difficult to get the book in the hands of people who would be interested in buying it. So what's next?
Next, well, I've got my book up on Amazon. It's free for anybody to order if they're listening. You just go to amazon.ca, type in Terra Nova New Earth by T.C. Bursey. It's also actually going to be for sale in around my area in retail. There's going to be paperback copies available at Route 320 Gas Bar in Harebay, the Rock Chicken Bar in Gambo, and a few other places as well. And the more of those I get, the more I can actually bring it home, so to speak, in around my area especially. I've seen overwhelming support, you know, from library events, author reading events, and libraries reaching out to me wanting to help. It's been overwhelming and phenomenal, as a matter of fact. So I wanted to thank my community as well for being so supportive of this work.
I appreciate your time. Congratulations and good luck with it, Terry.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. All the best. All right, bye-bye. Self-publishing can be difficult, but as you can hear in Terry's voice, very satisfying. Let's take a break for the news. When we come back, we're looking forward to speaking with you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 1. Good morning, Bill. You're on the air. Hello, Bill. Doing okay. How about you?
Yeah. I'm first rate. I want to chime in with my 2 cents on that sign business.
Yep.
I hear people saying you know, disrupt their peace and tranquility, and this about going to the park. And well, my take on that is.
Your take is? Bill, you still there? Okay. So I don't know if he's probably a cell phone related matter here, but he's still active on my line and the clock keeps ticking, but I can't hear what Bill is saying. Bill, are you still there? I'm going to guess that it's not a really good idea to be guessing at what someone wants to say, but let's see if we can get it back, Dave, so we can finish his point. Look, as I've mentioned many times, the issue regarding a landmark sign to the tune of $85,000 to be proposed to be put in Bannerman Park, obviously not the biggest deal in the world, and sometimes I get a bit surprised about what does pique the interest of listeners and potential callers. And in this case, there was plenty of people in and around that area who thought it was an inappropriate spot for it. Now, some people might disagree with that and think Bannerman's the perfect spot for it. I don't know, but let's see if we can get Bill to finish his thoughts on 2. Bill, you're back on the air. Oh, maybe not. So that call dropped. So that's definitely a cell phone issue. So one more time to finish the thought. Obviously not the biggest deal in the world, right? But it needn't be the biggest deal in the world for people to be willing to want to share an opinion on it. I mean, I'm not going to take all my cues from social media, but over the last number of days, a bulk of what I see is people chiming in on it. So when the city decides to move forward with something like this, I have no real particular issue with having a landmark sign somewhere in the city. But just on a personal note, and your opinion is absolutely welcome on the show, I just didn't feel like Bannerman was a good spot for a variety of reasons. It doesn't really jibe with the park itself. And secondly, if it's going to be about, getting as many eyeballs on it as possible, then that's a relatively secluded part of the city to get exactly that, maximum eyeballs. In other parts of the country where they have these signs in place, they're in much higher traffic areas. Toronto outside Exhibition Place and things like that. So are there other spots that would really maximize the number of people that see it and take pictures of it or what have you? And you don't need to be standing right alongside of something to get a picture with it. In the world of selfies, in the background, if the sign is there, whether it be in Dildo or Hollywood or where have you, I still lean in on thinking that maybe the South Side Hills is something we can explore. And the concept of public consultation probably allows for councils and provincial and federal governments to avoid some of these public backlashes. You're never going to please everybody, and if you're trying to, you're in the wrong game. Let's see if we got Bill on 1. Bill, hopefully you're on the air.
Yeah, sorry about that. I was coming out through Middle Pan there, and it's ridiculous for a signal. It always drops there.
I get it. Go right ahead, sir. What's on your mind?
Yeah, so the thing about the sign, I mean, it's foolish to be talking about it, but get discouraged, or not discouraged, but you get fed up listening to people when there's more important stuff on the go, Why don't they put it on a trailer with, nice skirting around it and its own solar power supply, and then you can hook onto it and go anywhere at all?
Yeah, I suppose, there's lots of ways to ensure that the illumination can be satisfied. There's all sorts of batteries can be employed to do stuff like that. And dragging it around, maybe I hadn't even thought of that, to be honest with you. I've only ever considered a permanent home for something like that, but fair enough. I hadn't even considered the fact that you can change the location.
Yeah, if there's a cruise ship coming in, you can put it on the waterfront. If you want to go up, God knows where with it, you can hook onto it and go on. And then, in the meantime, if you're not using somewhere else, shove it up in Bannerman or a Boring Park, wherever you want.
Yeah, I suppose you could follow along some of the different festivals that are part of the city's summer and winter, I would suggest, as well. Let me bounce this one off you. And I could be completely out to lunch, but it seems to me that, like, the South Side Hills just feels like a good spot for it. I know you're going to be pretty difficult to get up and touch it and get your picture taken directly alongside it, but some of the most iconic signs in the world are up in the hills so that people can see it.
Oh, no doubt about it. You look at, the infamous one, Hollywood sign, and then the Dildo sign. You can see them wherever you do in, I guess, Hollywood or Dildo. The 6-foot sign would be a job to make out what was on, I think, from across the harbour, but it would be an ideal spot for it if it was, large enough. But, yeah, with the trailer, they could put it in where they want.
It's an interesting idea. I never even considered it. And I don't imagine anyone at the council level and or city staff considered anything like that as well. So I wonder what...
Apparently not.
Likely not.
Yeah. But sometimes, that seems the smallest little things, people kind of go out of their way to either complain about it or make it an issue. When, you look at now, they're going to put that away somewhere for the winter, good enough, but they got to have a committee and meetings, so all that, is going to take time, and people got to arrange their schedules for it when they could be talking about something else. And I guess whoever was going pouring the concrete for it, there was probably a tender out for that already, I'd imagine, because it was construction season, so things would have had to be lined up, and they're probably going to need to be paid a penalty at least, or they got a retainer or deposit that was non-refundable. And all this sort of stuff means just taking more time and money from things that are more important.
I don't wonder what the financial implications will be. So the contract was awarded to EC Boone, just short of $85,000. If that does come with any time associated fee or penalty or whatever the right word is, I'd be curious. I have no idea, but we can absolutely get the answer to that question.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, everything has to be costed when it goes through all these committees and approvals and all that sort of thing. It would be interesting to know what extra is going to tack on. And that could be used to put another crosswalk or speed bumps in the school zone or something.
It's a fair point, because inevitably, unless something changes dramatically, all of the materials to make the sign come this time next year are probably going to cost more. So is that contract going to have to be revisited with an updated total cost? Probably. It's a good point.
I wouldn't be surprised.
No, me neither.
If I was given a quote to someone now to build a deck or a patio for them or a fence, and they said, I'm going to hold off now, and they wanted me to get quoted again next year, well, they're going to be getting a different price.
Very likely. That's a good point, Bill, and we'll incorporate that into the conversation. Anything else while we still have a cell signal with you?
No, that's about it. We're doing good. I mean, June this year, weather-wise, has been better than the last couple. At least you can, see further in your boots for fog, but it would be nice to get a scatter shot of rain in the nighttime where it wouldn't evaporate as soon as it hits the ground.
Agreed. Yep. It's pretty dry around where I live.
Yeah, that's for sure. Anyway, bye. I won't take up no more of your time. Appreciate the good time ahead.
I appreciate yours. Safe driving.
Alex.
Cheers,
have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye. And that's something that we can throw back out there, is the whole cell phone coverage issue. Look, I mean, even in parts of the capital city, places that were completely reliable are not as much anymore. And of course, then you talk about the absolute dead zones in many parts of the province. You talk about Labrador, you need a satellite phone versus a cell phone. The province did indeed have a pilot project to expand Wi-Fi, high-speed broadband, cell phone coverage down around Burgeo Highway last year. They've gone back out to tender for 10 different zones. Can't remember off the top of my head exactly where they all are, but that's a conversation we can continue to have. Many reasons why. A couple is the volume of people who are using the service. Secondly, it's the advent of 5G, which might be quicker when you're able to access it in your own home or your office or what have you, but it absolutely has reduced the amount of physical coverage that can be offered by a tower. We hear the stories all the time. Someone who can sit in their living room and, say 5 years ago, had 100% coverage right there from their own couch, and now they don't, because the tower is now emitting 5G service. So cell phone coverage, let's throw it in the mix. Also, every now and then get a couple of emails, people question as to whether or not the veracity or the merit behind speed cameras, because they're coming. There's going to be some 10 different cameras. Exactly where, not entirely sure. I think I'm probably in the minority in thinking they're a very good idea. Yes, some people won't pay the fines because some people don't pay the fines now. The intended goal is slow people down. Hopefully that's exactly what happens, because you see the stories, you hear the numbers of collisions, injuries, deaths that we see in and around this neck of the woods. Add to it, look no further than your insurance premiums. I mean, you could have a completely clean driver's abstract, but because we're in an actuarial pool that we share with the rest of the Atlantic Canada, my premiums are up. I didn't get a ticket. I didn't have a collision. Nothing was stolen from my vehicle. I didn't make a claim. But here we go. So slowing people down is probably good for all of us. Just a gentle reminder. In the pilot project last year, in just Paradise and Mount Pearl, what was it? Somewhere around 90,000 warnings were issued. This year, the warning will come with a fine. Let's take a break. When we come back, we're speaking with you. Don't go away.
You're listening to a rebroadcast of VOCM Open Line. Have your say by calling 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626 and listen live weekday mornings at 9 a.m.
Welcome back. Let's go to line number 1. Sean, you're on the air.
Hey, Patrick. How are you?
Doing okay. How about you?
Oh, pretty good. We really shouldn't be celebrating the first day of summer. I think we've had summer for the last month. So we're doing pretty well. It's going to be the hottest summer I think we've ever had in this province. And everyone's got to be careful, wear lots of sunblock, and drink lots of fluid, especially cold water. But I mention that because a lot of people are not used to it. And if you're in Ontario today, of course you wouldn't get used to it. You'd be drinking as much water as you can and getting in swimming pools, and we don't have ours open yet. But to the sign, the whole sign issue, and then I'll just talk briefly about cell phones. Southside Hills, if you can see it from Bowring Park, you can get some nice pictures from there. And then if we had some steps like a walking trail, and then some little wooden trail, if you will, with steps to bring you up to it. And if people want to go up there and get a picture, they can. There's lots of land up there that's not owned by individuals, it's owned by the city. It's owned by the province. It wouldn't be very much to put that sign up there as we drive in on the highway coming in to turn into Kilbride area, and you'll be able to see it from Bowring Park and so on. So that's my thought on the sign. I agree, Bannerman Park wasn't the place to put it. Anyway, that's all been dealt with.
Yeah, and just one comment coming from someone that says, from what I've seen of the signs like this elsewhere, it seems like they're meant for people to take their picture by the sign rather than for people to view it from a distance like the Hollywood sign. That might be the case, but that doesn't mean we have to do what everyone else does. We have to do what works best for us. And if that means that it's Bannerman Park or Bowring Park or down at the waterfront or in Kitty Vitty or who knows where, on an overpass on the highway entrance, whatever. I just think that maybe going to the public to get a feeling for the vibe is probably a really good idea. That's all.
Yeah, and you can easily set up a little website, and people can go in and put their thoughts there, and then mark an X at 5 or 6 different options, and because we can't do 40 options, but 5 or 6 options, and then we'll just see what people think. So, it is a serious thing. You don't want to be crowding a park and ruining Bannerman Park or Bowring Park with that big sign right in the middle of the park. It just doesn't fit. And I really don't see it fitting even in Bowring Park. Although there is one place out there by the very large parking lot where you come in the back or the further gate up Brookville Road. There's a nice piece of land in there with lots of trees in it. Maybe that's the place, just as you come in through the west gate. But I don't see anywhere else except maybe Southside Hills, and then you could take your pictures even from Bowring Park and still see the sign up there. On cellular phones, I'm always dropping calls too, and back in 1990, on July 1st, when we turned on the switch for cell phones, I was the one doing that, and it was Rogers back in the day, and because we had Hibernia coming, or at least the Bull Arm site was going to start construction, and we had to get cell phones done quickly, because you can just imagine the amount of people coming in dealing with business around the world, and including the presidents of Mobil Oil and Doris Engineering out of France, and many, many others that were involved. We turned on cellular. But what people should remember, if you're old enough to remember that, it was all 3 watts and 5 watts and 0.06 of a watt on your portable phone. So if you had the first initial flip phone or the Nortel phone, all those, they were all 0.6 of a watt. Today, the most wattage you get on a cell phone is 0.02 of a watt. So you're actually 1/3 of the wattage that we had in the smaller phones back in 1990, and a huge difference between the 0.2 of a watt and 3 watts, which we used to use with a high gain antenna on our car, or maybe you had it installed in your car, which is still the safest way to have it. We had hands-free, and it was all built in. So the problem is that when digital came along, I don't think, now I could be corrected, maybe Bell did add more towers, but they didn't add them close enough. So when you have 3 watts, the distance between one tower to the next is an easy handoff. But if you didn't add an extra tower in between, or 2 towers in between, the handoff wasn't going to work as well, because 0.2 of a watt will not get you to the next handoff site or the next tower. So you have to drop it somewhere in between. And that's why we're dropping all the calls, like even out at Patty's Farm. You wouldn't think you'd drop a call, but again, the towers are too far apart at 0.2 of a watt, and no one's getting 3-watt phones anymore. They're all digital, and we want all those services, like use it as your mini computer, and all the rest of it that we use it for. But the main reason we had cell phones back in the day was so we had communication. If you're going to be out hiking on your own, or berry picking, or out on a boat doing some fishing, or in the woods hiking, if something happened, you could get a call out. You can't do that anymore. My biggest concern when digital came in, was people going in the woods with their phones, and it'll show you on your meter, on the meter on your phone, the strength meter, full wattage, full coverage, 5 bars. But the truth is, those 5 bars are being fired out from the towers to your phones, all the phones that are turned on. And for the most part, they'll reach them. But your problem is that you only have 0.2 of a watt going back to the towers. There's no way in the world that you can communicate with the tower. And the tower is sending out hundreds of thousands of watts to everyone out there who have their phones turned on. There's your problem. So we need to put more towers in between the present towers so that it'll hand off the way it did back in 1990. That's analog in 1990. We're digital now, and we're only 0.2 of a watt. There's your issue.
Yeah, it's certainly one of them, no question. Sean, I'm just about up to the news break. Anything else quick before we say goodbye?
The only thing is people have got to test their phone. Really important. If you're going to go hiking or biking or fishing or berry picking, you should make sure when you get to the site you want to go to that your phone actually will get a phone call out, or at least identify if you're in the woods doing some quadding and so on. Make sure you know where the last place was that your phone can actually get a call out in case of emergencies. Nobody I know of thinks about that until they're in that situation with a phone you can't get a call out because it can't reach the tower. Remember, thousands of watts coming from a tower to you, but you only have 0.02 of a watt going back to the tower, and there's no way in the world that can reach the tower. So now you're in trouble. So if you're injured, or God forbid something more serious happened, like a heart attack or something, you can't get any help. So you should double check, where do I have the last possible phone call that I can make if I needed to make one?
Fair enough. And if you're going to be trekking that far off the beaten path, whether berry picking or whatever you're at, every time I hear that and you talk about, being able to access emergency services or first responders, if you're going out in the backcountry, bring a whistle. It just always seems like one of the smartest things you can do, because that whistle, the shriek of it, travels much further than your scream will. So always such a good idea.
You're absolutely right on, Patty. I heard someone say it the other day. It was a brilliant idea.
Appreciate the time,
Sean. It's better to get a phone call out. It's better to get a phone call out if you can.
Oh, absolutely. Okay. Thanks for this.
All right, good luck.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. All right, let's take a break for the news. When we come back, a couple of segments left for you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2 and say good morning to Captain Tim Ryan. He's an Army Reserve recruiting officer and joins us on line number 2. Good morning, Captain. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How are you?
Excellent today. Thanks for asking. How about you?
Good. Thanks for having me. So I just want to touch base with and let the fine folks in the community know that the primary Army Reserves are busy, obviously, these days. I heard you talking about the international level of GDP and numbers, and for me and certainly for many of us in the military, it's an exciting time for us. It brings a level of legitimacy to what we're doing now more than ever. And I will digress on getting into the world affairs, but we all know that it's not a warm and fuzzy place these days, and the Army needs us as reservists to augment them in these times of need. So there's lots of exciting things happening, and I just wanted to touch base and spread the word that there's lots of activity happening in the downtown area starting on June 26th to 2nd of September, both at the War Memorial and the Pedestrian Mall. There'll be soldiers walking about with pamphlets and information and smiles on their faces and ready to talk to the community members. Maybe it's someone that they know that wants to join, or maybe it's themselves that they want to join. And we'll be happy to converse with them with regards to the things and exciting opportunities with the reserves here in Newfoundland.
Yeah, you mentioned in the email that you sent me about exciting opportunities. Can you expand on that for me?
Yeah, so obviously I can't really speak to the billions of dollars that'll be invested. That's going to go into several different buckets, but nevertheless, we'll certainly see some of that. And what it comes down to, the Army Reserves, Patty, is that excitement of joining a new part-time job that won't interfere with your current job. In fact, we have facets of the Army Reserves that will go to your employer if there's issues with time off for training or what have you, to have that conversation with them about how that builds leadership and how it builds character for that individual working for them. And you can very well balance both things. It's a part-time job once a week, 1 weekend a month commitment. And of course, as long as you communicate to your chain of command, if you were to join, that, hey, hey, I have a busy family life or I have a busy school life. I can't make every single training night. Very flexible these days compared to the years gone by with regards to communication and understanding that everyone has other things on their plate. But I think it's really important that we promote as much as we can with the Army Reserves because, as I say, there's things aren't getting better in the world, but we can try to make them better with regards to promoting ourselves and being part of the community as well, Paddy.
How do the reserves work insofar as the location for your duty? Like in parts of the United States, for instance, the reservists can be called up as reservists and deployed in various parts of the country. How does it work here?
Yeah, so fair question. So we're located in the big gray building that a lot of people don't recognize as the base, as it's known, right across from Kitty Vitty Lake. So that's where we are housed, so to speak. So it's the Newfoundland Regiment, of course, the historic Newfoundland Regiment everyone knows of. But there's also the 37 Service Battalion, 37 Signals Regiment, and 37 Engineer Squadron as well as housed here. So there's lots of different opportunities, not just the infantry. There's service and support cooks, maintainers on the vehicles, signals, equipment operators. So if you're an IT person, that's an exciting role for that individual. Engineers, blowing stuff up and building things. There's lots of exciting opportunities within each unit that's in this building. As far as deployments go, we do get that question a lot. You'd have to be someone with a lot of years under your belt with your primary training done to be afforded to be on those deployments, but those are an option once you have a couple years punched under your belt with regards to your training and making sure that you have the baseline training that you have for your vocation. And then those opportunities can arise for you. And then the other thing, Patty, just to touch on is from day zero as a new recruit, if you have 5 years to your very first day, you can be employed as full-time summer employment. So there's summer employment full-time here with regards to other tasks. They can be minimal tasks, or you can be a driver for somebody to come into town, or you could be sent over to Gagetown to work there during the summer. So there's opportunities galore with regards to joining the Army Reserves. And to touch on the commitment itself, again, it's 1 weekend a month and one evening, usually Tuesday or Thursday evenings here down at the base, where you'll do your training with your unit and build those skills that you need to get to that next level of employment for yourself.
Do the reservists get paid?
Yes, yeah. So all that is all tax dollars, of course, can be found online on forces.ca. That's where people should go to make that first step to understanding what benefits are there. Health, dental, it is a paying job. It's a secondary. It's always been seen as a secondary job for somebody. And then, of course, once you're around long enough, the opportunities arise, and then you can get a full-time job here in St. John's. It's a competitive process, but those options are there for down the road once you've put some time in.
At the national level, there are some discussions inside the Canadian military about how they're utilised, and I make specific reference to things like Snowmageddon and members of the military here helping in that cleanup and other natural disasters. The military leaders are questioning whether or not that should be a role that they play. Do the reservists get involved in things like that?
Yes, Patty. So I'm currently looking at a certificate on my wall, actually, from the former Premier Ball. So I was involved with Snowmageddon myself, as were many people in regards to that. National disasters, we're seeing so much of it: forest fires, snowstorms, flooding. That's also not getting any better in the world we're in, unfortunately. But that is something that we are tasked. It's a more complex situation and process than people see. It has to come from a government perspective of a request from the provincial government to the federal government for that assistance. But yes, that is part of our role as reservists, and that makes it so much more legitimate. And I use that word a lot about legitimacy and what we do and how we are part of the community. It's not just about going off to a foreign land. It's about helping our own community where we live and ensuring that the people that we have are safe and sound. And as part of that Snowmageddon, Patty, I can tell you it was eye-opening for me to see the community in a different light in helping people. And there's so many people just here in St. John's proper that need support when those things happen. And I can tell you that we were more than happy to help when the call came in.
We were more than thankful to get the help. You mentioned the War Memorial. There's only 2 national war memorials in the country, one in the downtown of St. John's and one in Ottawa, of course. There's the concept, currently the province is paying private security to keep the the bad elements away as best possible. In Ottawa, there's a ceremonial guard, and I think back to Nathan Cirillo, who, of course, was gunned down while standing guard, active member of the military. Do you think that's something that we should see as a permanent feature for our National War Memorial?
I think that there's conversations about that. I can't speak to the specifics. I'm not privy to it, and I don't want to step into a lane that I'm not welcome in. But I can say that, yes, for now it is just a private company that's doing security, and I don't know what the plan is there for that. And I'll keep it to that for now, Paddy.
Fair ball. Captain, last one. So, and once again, if this is not a lane you're comfortable being in, please say exactly that. You know, with the expansion in government defence spending, 5% of GDP, $150 billion a year. The target is to hit that by 2035. That's the outcome coming from NATO this morning. My thoughts are we do know that we need more investment in the military, whether it be for equipment and or recruiting and retention, because we see there's some quick turnover in the military these days. My worry, and again, you can ignore this if you like, is with the supports that are not there for veterans, retired members of the military. I wonder whether or not that will compromise any opportunity for us to do better on that front. Because whether it be the paperwork warfare, the ease with which veterans can access services, and or the lack of supports in pockets of the country, any worries that defence spending proper might not see any increase in veteran support into the future?
Yeah, again, it's one of these things where I'll minimize my comments on that just because I'm not privy to that insider information at my level, but I know that there's a lot of investments coming. That even the 2 to the 5% max that I would think we would see as a GDP investment, I think that offers a lot of excitement for all those facets, from recruiting and retention, which is obviously my bag, and it's something I'm focused on. So it's fantastic to see that's a focus right now, and I think that's going to bleed into a lot of the other aspects of the Canadian Armed Forces, which is a great benefit, and we'll see those benefits as it rolls out.
Appreciate your time, Captain Ryan. So if folks want more information about the reserves and all the ins and outs, where do they go?
Yeah, so first step would be www.forces.ca. That will give you the general overview. Please pay attention to, there is two aspects. There's the reserves and the reg force. I'm selfishly promoting the reserves, of course, that's my job. And then you can reach us here locally at 709-733-3777.
Appreciate your time, Captain Ryan. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure. All the best.
Bye-bye.
That's Captain Tim Ryan, the Army Reserve Recruiting Officer here in the city of St. John's. Final break of the morning. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number one. Say good morning, Brendan Quinlan with Legend Tours. Good morning, Brendan. You're on the air.
Well, good morning, Paddy. I just wanted to make a comment or so relative to the proposed sign for St. John's, and I don't know if anybody has come up with what I'm going to suggest. So I just wanted to share with you, as I've thought of St. John's, I thought that may be an appropriate place for it. And I haven't seen the sign. I don't know the size of it or anything that way. But I thought what might be a good location is Harborside Park. Harborside Park, of course, is a very attractive area. They have lots of interpretive plaques. They have seating. They have some beautiful trees. It's a very accommodating area. And in the tourism season, you have thousands of people on Water Street. And, of course, you have the Terry Fox Monument not too far from there. And, of course, you have our beautiful War Memorial that's there as well. So my thought was Harborside Park. And I don't know what the end result will be with it, but I just wanted to share that with you.
Yeah, fair enough. I can picture Harborside Park, obviously. The proposed sign is 6 feet high, 38 feet wide. And I'm picturing the entrance into Harborside Park and either side of it. I suppose there's room there. I'd probably have to, stand at the War Memorial and size it up a little clearer. But if there was room, that sounds like a pretty good spot to me, because there definitely is room between the easement, the sidewalk, and the park itself. Whether or not that can accommodate 6 by 38, I'm not really sure, but it's a good spot in theory.
I think so, and I think it could fit. And I think, again, it's overall generally a good location because you have so many people that are in the downtown core on a regular basis. People come to St. John's, as you know. They want the downtown core. That's why they come. And again, it just crossed my mind. It's a very historic area. It's believed that's where Sir Humphrey Gilbert came in at 1583 and so on. And other royals have sailed in there in the past, right in that location. So I just wanted to share that with you. I don't know, again, what's ahead, but I just wanted to make that recommendation.
Yeah, and it's not a bad one whatsoever. I have to go downtown for something tomorrow, so I'll purposefully make a drive-by or a walk-by that particular area, because eventually the city is going to have to do what they should have done in the first place, is ask for input from people who are familiar with the city, possible locations, justify why they think one place or another is a good idea. I'm not hung up on the sign and where it goes or how much it costs necessarily, but if it's going to be a thing, let's hope that we make a decision that puts it in the best place possible. What that is, I'm not really sure.
Yeah, absolutely, Paddy, and I agree wholeheartedly, and that's why I called based on what I know of the city and so on. I thought that might be a good location.
Fair ball. Before we let you go, Brendan, so tourism season is pretty much here, and of course the biggest part of the season yet to come. August is going to be bananas here in the city with some 20,000 people here for the games. What's it look like for Legend Tours?
It's looking very good. Of course, we have reservations coming in on a daily and nightly basis as we push forward. And, of course, I don't mind saying for the past 6 weeks have been probably the busiest 6 weeks we've ever had. And if that continues, it'll be great, not just for us, but for everybody here on the island. There's thousands from all over, and I am happy to say there's many here from the US of A. And so it's looking really good. If the momentum keeps going without anything spectacular or negative happening in the world, I think it's going to be great.
I'm glad to know the Americans are traveling here. And if people here are not wanting to or wanting to travel to the United States, do what you see fit. Fill your boots. It's your money. And American travelers, we need to make sure that in some corners it's pretty emotional stuff, and some people might be willing to make a said American tourist unwelcome. Let's please not do that. You know, let's just enjoy the fact that people are still willing to travel here. The dollar is pretty favorable for Americans to travel to Canada. I think it's trading at 73 cents this morning. So, and just that reminder, there's nothing like the economic shot in the arm of out of province money coming. So let's open our arms to all the visitors and make sure they have every opportunity to spend as much money as they have.
Absolutely. And if you're down this way, Paddy, feel free to come in and see us. Will do.
I appreciate that, Brendan. Thank you.
You have a great day. Thank you.
The same to you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, and of course, every single day, more emails, than calls. And again, it's not surprising, but sometimes people pick up on some very interesting things and get a lot of traction in my email inbox as a result. One of the biggest issues I think being discussed today on the international scene is defense spending. A couple of comments saying that, we have to pay our fair share. Fair enough. I mean, because, we should not be in the business of piggybacking. I think more importantly, it's the concept of ensuring that our military is appropriately equipped and staffed, as opposed to worry about so-called piggybacks or whatever the case that people refer to. But part of this conversation is, I think, a base understanding of how the NATO alliance works. So there's minimal monies going from any countries into NATO operations. The issue is the member nations spending, now I guess it's 5% of GDP. And that target is going to be hit. We're supposed to hit it anyway. That's the pledge, to hit it in 2035. Not right away, but the annual military budget here, defense spending in Canada, is around $62 billion. So 5% translate at this moment in time. Of course, GDP is an unpredictable measure into the future, but it's going to be every bit of $150 billion per year. Is that something that we're positioned or well positioned to do? Or does that even matter? If it's part of being part of that 32 member nation alliance, then I guess that's where we are. Final check-in on the Twitter box. We're VOCM Open Line, you know what to do. Follow us there. Email address is openline@vocm.com. It might be fair ball. Dan saying it might turn into a water side of the park. It might have to be at the bottom. He's probably right there. All right, big show. Good show today. Big thanks to all hands, and we will indeed pick up this conversation again tomorrow morning, right here on VOCM and Big Land FM's Open Line. On behalf of the producer, David Williams, I'm your host, Paddy Daly. Have yourself a safe, fun, happy day. We'll talk in the morning. Bye-bye.